As promised, we are joined by the former GM of the Minnesota Vikings, Rick Spielman. Make sure you check out all of his stuff over at the 33rd team. They have unparalleled NFL insight for fans, fantasy players, and bettors, unmatched roster of NFL experienced contributors, including executives like Rick, head coaches, players. Visit the 33rdteam.com this week. All right. Rick, I want to ask you about these rookie mini camps. So we had some this past weekend. We'll have some this upcoming weekend. Talk to me as a GM about your feelings for those first rookie mini camps. Like, how much of it is excitement, and how much of it's like, is there anxiety? Like, man, I hope these guys all look good.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, I always looked at it like a holiday where you get to finally open up your Christmas gifts and see them run around. The thing that has changed back, we used to have what we called a rookie mini camp plus. So we had about 60 guys in there, and we actually invited you had your draft class, you had your free agents that you signed, your college free agents that you signed, but we invited about 40 other players that did not get signed after the draft. So we actually had a full-scale, two deep practices where we went through 7-on-7s. We went through some team period, and we were trying to use that as a tool to find some guys. And we found Adam Thielen that way. We found C.J. Ham that way, who's a starting fullback. We found Marcus Sherrills, who ended up being a really good punt returner for us. So we try to still continue to find guys that maybe slip through the cracks. What's different nowadays, and you have to be conscientious of, is a lot of these draft picks especially come in and look at how many top 30 visits they've been on, and how are they in football shape. I mean, we had guys that will come in 10, 11 visits, and then the coaches get all excited because they want to go, we get to coach again finally on the field. But there was a lot of soft tissue injuries. So you got to kind of balance both worlds if you can.
That's really interesting. Back in my day, I always feel so old saying it, Rick, but like 2001, there was no rookie minicamp. The
No.
minicamp the weekend after the draft, I got there to take my physical, and I was looking around, and it was like Jeff George, Big Daddy Wilkinson, Bruce Smith, Darrell Green. I was like, holy crap. Like, these are all the guys I've been playing in Madden with. But at some point, Rick, it felt like half the team just did rookie mini camps, half the teams did full squad. Now I think everybody just does a rookie mini camp, either the first weekend after the draft or 2 weekends after. I think it's pretty much 100% rookie mini camps, right?
Yeah, and why that has changed is because a lot of them will come in and then start into the off-season program after that. But you can have that 3 days to get them caught up to speed on how you line up in a huddle, start implementing the playbook and installing offensive and defensive schemes. So it's become more of a teaching session, and to get them, into the off-season program, down in the weight room, start doing the conditioning to kind of see where they're at, and then slowly put them into your OTAs with the veterans, because the veterans nowadays are not allowed to compete or practice or even be out on the field in the rookie mini camps. But there are some veterans that aren't signed that may show up, and you may want to try to put them in there. So yeah, it's changed definitely. I remember when I came out, and I was nowhere as good as my brother Chris. My first rookie minicamp, that's all you had was a 3-day minicamp. Then the vets went back home. There were no OTAs. And my first, they didn't have Madden back then. So first guy I lined up against was Kellen Winslow when I was a linebacker. And I didn't know whether to cover him or to ask him for his autograph or how does this work? And then the first snap in one-on-one drills, I got spun around like a top, and I said, yeah, probably the front office may be the best route for me to go after that experience.
So, Rick, I played right guard at Princeton.
Oh, I know who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but then I get to Washington for my first mini camp, and they had me at right tackle, and I was with the twos because some other kid failed his physical or something. So my first one-on-ones, I'm at tackle after starting 3 years in the Ivy League at guard, and I'm against LeVar Arrington, who still to this day might be the biggest freak show I've ever seen. I mean, I was so worried about his speed that I kicked out so fast, he beat me clean inside. I didn't lay a hand on him because I was so worried about, because I'm from Pennsylvania. So I knew how fast he was. I saw him have like 90-yard punt returns in high school. So I was like, oh, crap. I will say this, though, by the way. Lots of things are better this time of year. Playoff hockey, playoff hoops. If you want to take things to the next level, drink some Labatt Blue Lights with your friends and live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. All right, Rick, how soon do you feel like you had a pretty good idea of whether or not a kid had a chance or not, or whether or not one of your draft picks was good or not? Because I've heard the stories over the years of position coaches telling front office guys, listen, I know you took him in the third round, but this kid doesn't have it. I guess I'm curious, like, when did you start to feel like you had a pretty good feel for it, either positively or negatively?
I think after you get through the OTAs now, because the coaches are with them down in the meetings. But one of the things that I thought was very important, so you don't have that type of conversation, is that when we selected a player, the coaches were heavily involved in the process because I wanted them vested in that player as well. So rarely, even when we went through the interview process and I didn't want a coach come up to me and say, well, this player can't learn our system. And I says, well, I have it documented here because we just went through the draft meetings. You met with him on Zoom. We met with him at the combine. You told me that he was fine and would be able to learn the system. So I try to do a lot, not only with the scouts, but also the coaches being a major part of the process as well. So we did make that selection and we talked about all that stuff that hopefully it wouldn't come. And you're never going to be 100% right. So, but I would say after the OTAs, even though it's, not full contact and all that stuff, but you got a pretty good sense athletically, but you got even a better sense on how quickly he's picking up the schemes. And that's the most important thing, because if you can't learn the schemes, you're not going to be able to get on the field, no matter how athletically gifted you are.
Rick, there's no question. I'll say, so I played 7 years. I would say for the most part, and there's one glaring exception, for the most part, with the rookies, you could tell, like, after the first week or so, like, the kids that had a shot and the kid that, like, it just wasn't going to happen for them. Even that first minicamp I was telling you about, I guess, coming from Princeton, Rick, I built the guys up so much in my head. Like, I thought they'd be better. I kept blocking this kid who was a second team all ACC DN from Clemson. I think his name was Terry Bryant. And I kept thinking in my head, like, when's he going to turn like the Clemson on? Like, when's he going to, and I was like, I guess I had built him up so much in my head. I thought he'd like pick me up and throw me. I was like, okay, he's just a regular guy. But then you're right. There's other guys that just mentally struggle. The one exception I will say, in 2003, I was in Dallas, Rick, and we took a tight end in the third round. And he was so bad at that first mini camp. I mean, didn't know what he was doing. Couldn't block anybody. I remember thinking, I can't believe they took this kid in the third round. I mean, what a bust. Rick, it was Jason Witten.
Yeah.
So it's not 100%. It's not 100%.
No.
But it is interesting. Like, recently, the Giants picked up Andrew Thomas's fifth-year option. I'm always so jealous of the highly drafted guys because he was not good as a rookie. And there's other guys that aren't good like their first 2 years, and then they figure out third or fourth year. If you're like a low-round pick or an undrafted guy, you don't get that chance. Like, you better be good right away or you're done. Whereas the first-round guys, they get like 3 years to figure it out.
Yeah, but I would say to counter that a little bit, some of these guys, first of all, they better be physically talented enough to even be there, or else you made a mistake from a personnel side, not identifying the athletic skill set it takes to play in this level. The other part is a couple of those guys in the later rounds and even some of the college free agents, if they're not ready, mentally or technically, because there's a big difference probably, and you learn that playing in the Ivy League, and then all of a sudden you're up in the NFL, and the difference, especially in your position, is technique. Because once you figure that out, but that's not done in 1 week or 2 weeks. But if you've seen signs of that, this kid's going to improve, because we always judge where he's at here and then how high can he go from there. And a lot of times it clicks for different players at different times. And so you may say, well, now we know this guy still has talent, nowhere near ready yet, but let's throw him on the practice squad and let's see if he continues to develop through the season. Because I can't tell you how many times a player we saw at rookie minicamp, and then by week 6 or 7, if he's on a practice squad, it's a totally different player. And especially the examples you gave is that the speed of the game, it's not your physical ability. It's just learning the speed of the game. It's learning the technical part of the game, because it's all technique once you get up to the NFL. And once you master that, and it's funny, and I would ask you this question: when you're trying to learn something new, whether it's your hand placement or your set in Pass Pro or whatever it is, when you're struggling, you always go back to something you're the most comfortable with, and probably what you did in college, until it takes time for that to click in. And now, okay, I feel it's like my golf swing. I'm still horrible because I'm changing my grip and I'm changing my cock in my wrist, and it's going left and right and everywhere. But I'm hoping that I'm a practice squad type golfer that eventually be able to compete in my men's league in the summer.
Rick, 2 more quick ones. So when you they didn't have tryout players when I was in the league, but now that's a really big thing where, all these mini camps, like I see these kids, some kids go to a tryout both weekends.
Yep.
Some kids, just go to one. I see sometimes they have 40 tryout guys. They don't sign one of them. Like, do these, maybe you answered it earlier with Thielen and those guys, but do those tryout guys actually have a chance?
Now, some of them are there for space eaters, so you can line up 11 people up front, so you can run some kind of a full offense, even if you're not going to compete against the defense. Just so if you just drafted a quarterback or your main guys, so they can get used to that as well. But back in the day when I got signed as a free agent, there wasn't a roster limit, so there was 140 guys at camp every year. So
wow.
With the 90, the 90-man roster limits now. And the other thing too is that I would think some of them are just, you stand in here and please do not fall on the ground and blow our first round running back's ACL out. So just stand there and go through the steps and get us through without hurting anyone else on our team, please. But there are guys, like I said, like the Thielen scenario and things like that, you never know what you're going to find. And we had a great scouting department that identified a lot of these guys to bring them in. And we used to have a contest. Guys that, they got $100 gift certificate if they found a Thielen type guy. But if you brought in the worst guy, then you got a T-shirt that you had to wear the week after in identifying how bad of a selection you made during that time.
That is funny. That's awesome. Hey, make sure you check out all the great work Rick is doing over at the 33rd team. Obviously has a wealth of experience, and you can see the personality as well. Rick, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate you having me on today.